This is Between the Uprights. Football is life. The rest is just details. Here are your hosts, Joe, Matt, and Chris.
Another playoff appearance, another playoff exit for the Baltimore Ravens, who, since Lamar Jackson's been the quarterback, are 3-2 against quarterbacks not named Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. Against Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, 0-3. They have never beat the Bills or the Chiefs in the playoffs since Lamar Jackson's been the quarterback, and the turnovers are consistently a problem, as he had one interception as well as a fumble in that game. Multiple errors at multiple points, and it's starting to wonder what is next for the Baltimore Ravens. There is clearly some questions that need to be asked as they sit right now. We are looking at the Baltimore Ravens, who are going to be without their starting left tackle, who is in a void year and is going to be one of the highest coveted tackles on the market at 31 years old. They still retain Derrick Henry. They're losing Nelson Aguilar, who honestly was at best a wide receiver 3. Defense has questions, offense has questions, and it's not like they have a lot of cap space with only $17 million per spot rack available in 2025. The Baltimore Ravens have a lot more questions than they do answers right now. And once again, the critics will be on Lamar Jackson. I put out a video earlier in the year. You can go check out that video. It's on this channel, talking about Lamar Jackson and what Lamar Jackson's career projection looked like. And I said that he was a really good regular season quarterback that probably isn't going to have very much postseason success, because you're the third or fourth best quarterback in the conference, and you're going to be the third or fourth best quarterback in your conference pretty much your entire career. You're essentially Phillip Rivers in the AFC right now, who is going to consistently have opportunities, but is always going to run into the Tom Brady and Peyton Manning of our era, and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. And to be fair, everybody else who talked about, I did a comparison in that video about his playoff success and his career trajectory, and they all compared to one Tony Romo. In fact, the total games played was half. The yards were half. The touchdowns were half. The only thing he outdid him in was rushing yards, because Tony Romo wasn't mobile. But all the passing statistics are Tony Romo. Even the playoff statistics are identical for how many games they've played. Obviously, Lamar Jackson's gone over that game total now, and it seems like I'm hating on Lamar Jackson, but you can't really argue when those are the numbers. I don't know what to tell you. Since 2018, he's had 7 years. 7 years, and it's the same thing every year. Now, everyone's going to want to point at Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews had the fumble. Mark Andrews didn't catch the tying 2-point conversion. If you're a realistic NFL fan, realistic Ravens fan, and you look at that game, should you even have been down? Should you even have been in the situation where you had to have a 2-point conversion? No. That was a microcosm of a plethora of errors you made as an offense. That's the answer to that question, right? You made there was more problems than just Mark Andrews had a fumble and Mark Andrews didn't catch a 2-point conversion. That's realistically what it is. But where do you go from here? And I'm going to go to Matt. Matt, where do the Ravens go from here? Because we're going to be sitting here, and for the next, 4 or 5 months, all Baltimore is going to hear about is that Lamar Jackson is not him. Even though he's he's got in the conversation for his, third, fourth MVP?
Yeah. He might win his third this year. It's crazy. He's the favorite to win his third this year, by the way, because he already got the first team All-Pro nomination. So most of the time when you get first team All-Pro and you're a quarterback, that means you're probably going to win the MVP. But you talked about, people dealing with people speculating if Lamar's the guy in the offseason or not. Like you mentioned, they've dealt with this the last 6 years, so it's going to be nothing new. I mean, it's a recurring theme at this point. And to your point, to your point about Tony Romo and Phillip Rivers, damn, I don't know if I'm with that. I don't know if I'm willing to go that far. Again, Lamar's still a young player. He's still, I think he's 28 now, so again, we talked about this with Justin Herbert on a previous episode. I'm not giving up on Lamar Jackson. I'm just not. He's still one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But like you mentioned, it's tough in a conference that has Patrick Mahomes, that has Josh Allen, that has Joe Burrow, that has CJ Stroud. There's a lot of really, really good Justin Herbert as well. There's a lot of really good quarterbacks in the AFC. So to be consistently up there with those guys and having to compete with those guys every year and coming up short a lot of the time, it's going to be tough for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. But listen, man, I said this earlier in the year as well. Joe, you talked about a short you did about Lamar. There was a short I did about the Baltimore Ravens, okay? And my main theme of this short, Joe, do not lose your identity. Know who you are, okay? You have to know exactly who you are when it comes playoff time, okay? And I compared the Baltimore Ravens to a giant swole dude on the elliptical, okay? You have no idea who you are, okay? Because you're the biggest dude in the gym. You're the swollest dude in the gym. You should be on underneath the squat rack, squatting 500 pounds, squatting 6 plates. You should be squatting a ton of weight. But in reality, you are on the elliptical because you have no idea who you are. The Ravens this year were 9-0 when Derrick Henry got 20-plus carries. They were 4-5 when he got less than 20 carries. Joe, you know how many carries he got versus Buffalo? 16 carries. Again, if you give Derrick Henry the ball 16 times, you should not expect to win that game, especially when you're playing against a team like Buffalo who's going to do everything right. They're going to do things the right way. Again, we saw what happens when you don't give Derrick Henry the rock, and we saw what does happen when you give Derrick Henry the rock. The one drive in the third quarter where they just said, hey, Derrick Henry, take the ball. They went down and scored a touchdown in like 30 seconds, like 3 minutes. They went down there super fast and scored a touchdown. So again, they forgot who they were, and it bit them right in the ass. And then again, our last video last week when we were previewing the game, what did I say was the X factor coming into the game? It was the turnover battle. 3-0. 3 turnovers for Baltimore, 0 turnovers for Buffalo. But you're just not going to beat Buffalo if you lose a turnover battle by 3. Buffalo as well played a completely clean game. 0 drops, 0 fumbles, 0 picks, and they had 1 penalty for 10 yards. That is how you win a playoff football game. Right there, if you don't make any mistakes, it's going to be so hard for the other team to beat you. While the Ravens had 2+ drops, obviously not even including the Mark Andrews one on the goal line, the 2-point conversion, a fumble, a pick, and then 5 penalties for 43 yards. So as the famous obviously famous, the greatest coach of all time, Bill Belichick once said, you can't win until you keep yourself from losing, okay? And that's what the Baltimore Ravens did. The Ravens beat themselves in this game, and you have to blame Lamar Jackson because of it, because he was the main reason, like you mentioned, Joe, he's the main reason they're down double digits at halftime. Obviously, he had a great bounce back in the second half, but that pick was a horrible pick. There was no way that pass was going to be completed, and then that fumble directly led to a Buffalo touchdown right after that. So, again, Mark Andrews deserves his blame. Obviously, he does. He had the bad drop in the first half, then he has the fumble, then he has the 2-point conversion drop. He obviously deserves blame for that. But again, Lamar Jackson also deserves some blame for that first half, because even including a really nice second half, he wasn't great in that game as a whole. So you have to blame Lamar Jackson some. But to Lamar Jackson's credit, okay, he's one of the greatest regular season quarterbacks we've ever seen, okay? And there is another one of the greatest regular season quarterbacks that we've ever seen, who his first 7 seasons are very, very similar. Through 7 seasons, Lamar Jackson and Peyton Manning, both multiple MVPs, 3-5 playoff records, 0 Super Bowl appearances. Peyton won his first Super Bowl in his 9th season. Lamar is entering his 8th season after this season. So again, I am not giving up on Lamar Jackson. You're on the same path that Peyton Manning was, okay? All you have to do is when you get to the playoffs, you have to be able to overcome some of these things that we've seen in previous years. We saw Peyton Manning eventually overcome it. We've got to see you eventually overcome it as well. But right now, Lamar Jackson, 4 of his 8 playoff games, he has multiple turnovers. That's 50%. And then in the regular season, he's played 94 games and has 14 games with multiple turnovers. That's 15%. So 15% in the regular season, he has multiple turnovers. 50% in the playoffs, he has multiple turnovers. That ain't going to cut it. Obviously, you're playing better opponents in the playoffs, so that has to be brought in as well. But again, you can't turn the ball over multiple times in the playoffs and expect to win against good teams. And he's never won a playoff game where his defense has allowed more than 14 points as well, more than 14 points. So again, he's had to win playoff games where the defense has been great as well. I believe Lamar Jackson eventually wins a Super Bowl. But right now, you have to believe he's early Peyton Manning. Right now, he's James Harden. Right now, he's Joel Embiid. Right now, this one hurts my soul to say, he's Aaron Judge. You know, like right now, he's a high-level regular season performer, one of the greatest we've ever seen in the regular season that doesn't perform in the playoffs. And also, sidebar, we have to give some blame to John Harbaugh here too. John Harbaugh deserves his slice of the blame as well, because since 2012, when they won the Super Bowl, 12 seasons, they've missed the playoffs 5 times. They've only won 3 division titles. They're 3-6 in the playoffs, 0 Super Bowl appearances, and only 1 conference championship game appearance. So if you had that energy for Mike Tomlin, where it was like, Mike Tomlin's got to go, they haven't had a lot of playoff success recently, you got to have that same energy for John Harbaugh, because the last 12 years, he's basically in the same boat as Mike Tomlin. So again, I don't know if I'm going to pick the Ravens to win a Super Bowl anytime soon. I'm not going to be surprised if they do. But again, it's got to be up to Lamar Jackson stepping his game up and really performing in the playoffs, because he still, even with a great second half, did not perform well in this game. And he's going to have to be able to prove it for us to shut up, and that's just what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, the Phillip Rivers comp's a little rough. But Phillip Rivers was in the league for 17 years. You know what his record was against Tom Brady? 0-3. Mm-hmm. every time that his playoff thing ended, 3 of those times, it was Tom Brady. So, I mean, it's a similar track. I mean, we talk about all the time, like, what's it like going through the AFC? The AFC has some of the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL. Like, in fact, if you look at the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, pretty much every single fucking one of them is on the AFC side of the fucking
at least 4
NFL, right? And he's one of them, but that was the same way it was in Phil Rivers' time. You had Tom Brady, you had Peyton Manning, Big Ben was in there for a little bit, you had, and then Phillip Rivers was there. And then, those were the guys. That was every year. You had to go see every single one of those guys, right? You had to go see them, right? And then, Carson Palmer was throwing bombs earlier in that setup too. He was always a top 10 guy. He was reminding me a lot of like what Kirk Cousins is right now. A lot of numbers, not a lot of playoff success. That was what Phillip Rivers had to deal with. Lamar Jackson has to deal with that same thing. Realistically, if you combine all of Lamar Jackson's rushing and passing statistics over his 7 years and all of his, touchdowns and then all of his interceptions and lost fumbles, the statistics track to total yards that Phillip Rivers threw for in his 17 years. That's about where they're at. So, the numbers comparison, and I like my numbers, that. I'm a big stats guy. Phillip Rivers had to deal with the same shit, and it always happened the same way. You just run into these guys, and if you're the 3rd best quarterback and you're up against the 2nd best quarterback, you're probably not going to win. It's just the way it is, and it happens to the best of us. But at the same time, that's why Peyton Manning didn't have as many Super Bowls. He had Tom Brady. Peyton was 2nd, Brady was 1. Josh Allen, same problem. Patrick Mahomes is 1, Josh Allen's 2. Lamar Jackson, same thing. He's looking up at these guys. He's the Phillip Rivers of this era. He's looking up at 2 really good quarterbacks, and he hasn't been able to beat them yet. You can't deny that. But like you said, he's only 7 years in. He could be Tom Brady, or he can be Peyton Manning, mm-hmm. or he's going to end up being Phillip Rivers in this situation, in this era of quarterbacks. Those are your 2 options. You're either a really good quarterback who didn't win a Super Bowl, right? Because you were the 3rd best quarterback in a loaded quarterback division or conference, or you finally get over the hump. And he's got time to figure it out, but it goes back to, and I'm going to do a little segue here, because there were 31 teams had a shot at Lamar Jackson.
Yes.
In the 2023 offseason. And no one took him. No one. That tells you what the league believes in Lamar Jackson's value based on what the tag was that they were offered for. And it's a damn shame, because I think Lamar Jackson is easily a Super Bowl caliber quarterback.
For sure.
I think that in the right system, he could be that. And I do believe that you're right. John Harbaugh deserves some of the blame here. But, the path forward, it's murky. It's cloudy. I don't know where the Baltimore Ravens go from here, but they need to take a long look in the mirror. And like you said, Matt, figure out who the hell they are.
This has been Between the Uprights. Football is life. The rest is just details.